Hello, very nice to meet you all. I'm from Denmark. This is my first time in Bucharest, and I'm actually enjoying it very much. So it's great to see you all. I'd like to discuss the way that I see the world is changing. We used to be in an industrial economy, and the industrial economy had a certain logic. It was very much based on physical things, cars, products that were standalone. And what I see now is that we're entering a new economy, and the economy will change just as much as the economy changed when we went from an agricultural society to the industrial society, and the power relations and the business models, everything had to be reorganized. And I think that we're right now, we're entering really the stage where the economy becomes a digital economy, a connected economy, which is quite different from the industrial economy. And what I'll do in this speech is that I'll try to talk about some of the ways that the logic changes, how what you need to know what to do changes, and also the relations on the labor market basically change. The three large trends that are driving this, and they all start with the C basically. And of course, at a place like this, you all know that the world is becoming more connected. And I think if you try to think ahead, it's impossible to not see that this is going to continue. The world will become more and more connected. We will become more connected, and we will become more connected with our machines, and our machines will become more connected in the Internet of Things. You know all of that. What it does is that it creates a lot of interdependence in the system, so that we are all part of the same solution. It's very hard to do something without affecting everybody else in some way or other. The other large trend I see is co-creation or interactivity. It used to be that if you think about television, television, you can only watch television. It's a passive experience. But what's happening now is that the world is becoming interactive. We expect to be able to interact with the objects that we're using. We expect that there's somehow a way that we can enter a menu and we can change it. Or you could say that as consumers, maybe in many cases, our position is changing because we are now co-creators. We can become part of contributing to the solution that we're using. Of course, this is true when we're using the internet, when we are entering stuff on blog posts, on Facebooks. We are both consumers and we are producers of the things that we're using. But I think that this will extend also to something in the physical world, where something like 3D printers will make it possible for a lot more of us to actually create stuff that we use. If we need jewelry, if we need just a spare part for something that is broken, we'll be able to print it, we'll be able to participate in designing it. So you could say that creation has been democratized. It used to, you could only produce these things in large factories, but now we can see that it'll be possible to produce it on a desktop printer. I don't know, does it sound okay? This third trend that I see is coordination. And this is basically also the trend that includes artificial intelligence. You can see how the solutions that we are creating are becoming much more complex, because they're able to think about a lot more circumstances. Think about when Google does a search. You know, you have several hundred signals that are combined to create just a solution that you need. Google knows who you are, they have your personal profile, they know who the advertisers out there are, who wants to pay money to send you the advertising, they know where you're going, they know your calendar, your email, all of that stuff, and all of that is coordinated and creating just the solution that you want. Here is the search that you wanted. And this was impossible before, to coordinate so many factors, but now we can do that, and this makes it possible to create much more complex solutions than we used to have. So these are the main trends, and what they mean is that we're entering an economy that is quite different from the industrial economy. I used to work for this company. It's called Danfoss. It's one of the largest Danish companies. And the initial product that the company made, and which was a great success, is a thermostat. And it's a classic industrial object. You can produce it in a factory, and when it came out, it really made a great difference to people. If you have a thermostat, suddenly you can regulate your comfort in a room. But the problem with a thermostat is that after a while it becomes a commodity. Suddenly a Chinese company can make a copy of a thermostat, and basically it's very hard to improve a thermostat, because who cares if it's just a little more precise or not. It doesn't really matter on a thermostat. So producing an industrial object like that is really not a very good business, because you're only competing on price. That's the only way you can make a difference. So this was the industrial economy. Now what's going on is that we're entering a different kind of object, a smart object. And this is the economy that I'm talking about, because this is also a thermostat, but this is a smart thermostat. And this means that it's connected, that you can co-create with it, you can program it. It knows when you're at home, and it takes note of it, and gradually it programs itself and starts creating a program for controlling the heat in your house. And every one of these thermostats are connected to the other thermostats in the house, so they can create a coordinated solution. And not only that, this thermostat can then exchange through the cloud information to your windows, or to your door, or to your furnace, or to all the other objects that you might have in a smart house. So suddenly this object is not an industrial standalone object. Really, the value of this object is because it connects to all the other objects, and it can create solutions that go far beyond what just a thermostat could do. And I think this kind of solutions, this new level of value, is really what will drive the new economy. This is what your job will be. It'll be to create solutions, not by creating single products, but by connecting products and using all the data that they accumulate to create solutions that are much better suited for a very particular context for you right now and here. So really, if you think about this object, a smart object, I think we tend to think about objects that they exist in a physical world, and then there are other things that exist in the virtual world. But I think in this new economy, the trick is really to look beyond this distinction between the physical and the virtual, and to see that it's precisely because it's both a virtual object and a physical object. This thermostat exchanges all the time through the cloud information with other objects. It generates data. It exists as an object in a virtual world where you can control your home. So I think it's really important to see that the future objects have two sides. They have a digital twin. And if you only create an object that has no digital twin, you're back in the industrial age. If you just create a chair, if you just create a car, if you just create some food, but you're not online with this that you're creating, you're in the industrial age, and this is not where growth will happen in the coming years. So I think we'll see a whole class of objects, and we already have a lot of these objects, where if you look at some of these things, the robot Pepper, it's basically, of course it's a robot and it works like a robot, but this is also a platform where you have a whole community of people who write programs for Pepper, who exchange programs, who co-create new smart functions for the robot. And it's the same with drones or with a car. These objects are online, and a large part of the value that they have comes simply from the fact that they're part of a community of people who are exchanging data and creating new functionality for these objects. So again, this is where the new economy is happening. Let's go back to the industrial object and talk about a car. You know, it used to be that if you don't have a car, you really want a car, because if you want transportation, of course, your life becomes a lot easier. But the problem is that we now all have cars, or most of us have cars, and the more of us have cars, the harder it becomes basically to improve the experience. Because what you want is maybe not a car. Maybe what you want is mobility. You want to move fast. You want to get from A to B in comfort. But you really don't care if you have the car, because sometimes the car is just, a hassle that you have to park it, you have to pay for it, all that stuff. So maybe you can move from an economy which looks at the product, the car, instead creating a solution. And the solution doesn't have to be the car, because sometimes, if you're going to a business meeting, you need a car and you need a connection to an aeroplane. But maybe you can take an Uber, maybe you can share a car with somebody, and then the next day you're in a completely different situation. Maybe you need to have a lot of heavy goods with you, and you need a different combination for that. So the idea is that when you don't focus on selling the car, but you focus on delivering a solution for every person in the situation they are in right here and right now, you're actually creating a lot more value. But you do it in a very different way, because you have to then use many, many different resources to create the solutions. And this is where what I talked about before, we're all connected, we're co-creating the solutions, and this is very much about coordinating solutions to make this happen. And this is what I argue will happen. What I do is I call this instances. An instance is a solution for Thursday evening. You need to go to the bar and you need to get home safely afterwards. Okay, then we'll find one solution for you. Instances are things that come together just for one moment, and 5 minutes later it could be a different combination of cars, it could be a different combination of public transport, of parking spaces. All of that changes all the time. So you move from a focus on products to a focus on processes. And this is just a very, very different way of creating a business. And it's just a different way of thinking about how you create value. I think in some ways it reminds me of when several hundred years ago, when we thought the world was flat and that the whole universe was rotating around us. And I think many industrial businesses have a similar understanding of what they do. They place themselves in the middle of the universe and they think that everybody else is rotating around them. And you may be doing the same in your own business. You can think about that. I think if you can go back to the car example, it used to be that if you were Ford or you were Volkswagen, you would produce a standard mass-produced car and you would push it out to the customers, and everybody would get the same car because the car manufacturer was at the center of the universe and the consumers were basically just sort of around them and receiving passively what you were sending them. But I think when you think about instances, about creating solutions, then you have to change the universe. You have to realize that you are not the center of the universe as a producer. It's the customer's needs in this specific point that is in the center of the universe now. And now you have to find out what resources can create the right solution for this person right now. So what this means is that now suddenly the car manufacturer is just one of a number of resources that can be used. And you have to realize that, because if you are supplying solutions like that, if you are a car manufacturer, then you have to understand that actually what the customer needs is mobility. And you're not the only one delivering. There are other companies that are involved at the same time, and you want to find out what are they doing. You want to coordinate with them. You want to exchange data with them so that you can create a solution that fits you. Sometimes you're part of the solution, sometimes you're not. But the important thing is that you have to see yourself as part of a system rather than just yourself in the center of the universe. What's really important here, and this is a new player in the economy, this is the platform. The platform is the company that organizes this. The platform is the company that coordinates it. And again, this comes down to this idea that we can be, we're connected, we're online, we can enter data, we're part of a dialogue about creating a solution right now and right here. And the platform is really the central player, just like the factory is, the large companies were the manufacturers in the industrial period. Now the powerful companies will be the platforms. And we can see this already. you know, if you look at these companies, these are the darlings of the stock exchanges. These are the companies that are growing enormously fast. And the interesting thing about them is that they don't have their own factories. They don't have their own assets. You know, if you look at if you look at Airbnb, they don't own the hotel rooms. They don't build hotels. They just connect resources with users in a particular situation. Oh, you need an apartment in Copenhagen for 3 persons in October. Fine, bang, you make an instance. That's what the platform does. So it knows what's going on, it makes it possible to interact, but it doesn't have to own it itself. And again, this is very different from the industrial model, where if you were a company and delivering a solutions, you would do it with your own asset. You would build that hotel. Now you don't have to do it. It's all merely coordinating solutions. And of course, we can see exactly the same patterns a lot of other places. In a sense, hotels.com or any of these hotel chains they work the same way. They know what hotels are out there, and they know what the customers want, and they connect them, and they charge 25%, which shows you how powerful the platforms are. Because you can say the platform that charges 25% just to coordinate a customer with a hotel, why should you get that much money? But fine, if they don't do it, you're invisible. If you're not on hotels.com as a hotel, you will not be found by the customers. So the platform has a very, very central position in the new economy. There are lots of examples of this. The App Store, of course, is a great example of a platform. Apple does not create all the programs that it sells on for its iPhone. It simply says, you can go here, here's a marketplace. We will decide if it's okay that you enter the marketplace, and we'll take 30%, but you have all the risk. You will develop the program, and you only get 70% of the profit. So, but on the other hand, if Apple did not do this, if they did not create the platform, well, the value would not be created. So it really is a win-win situation. Here's another example from physical production. It's a company called Shapeways, and what they do is, if you go to Shapeways' website, you can see that they have thousands and thousands of various products, small things like this, and they're all 3D printed. So Shapeways is really just a big farm or a big product plant with factory with very advanced 3D machines. They do lots of different products because people can send in their own drawings, and then 3D they have it 3D printed by Shapeways. But the thing is that if you are a customer at Shapeways and you design this beautiful mobile phone case, maybe you think, maybe others would like to buy that as well. And now you can have Shapeways printed, but you can also make your own little shop in Shapeways' website, so that actually you're both a customer because Shapeways prints your mobile phone case, but you're also a co-creator because now you're a designer for Shapeways, and customers can go and they can find your design, and they will pay you for the design and Shapeways for printing it out. So now suddenly the roles are changing. You're both a customer and somebody who offers something on the platform. So I think if you want to do this, what it requires is, as a company, you have to change your perspective and look at, how can I create not finished products? How can I create tools that would make it possible for the people who use my services to be part of creating the solutions for customers? You want to make it easy for others to co-create together with you. And this is very different from designing a finished product where everything has already been done once and for all. I'll give you some examples of this. The thing is, you want to involve, rather than saying, imagine this was a healthcare solution. If you go to a hospital today, it's very much about, oh, what can we do for you? What can we do to you? But actually, if what you want is health, you want to be healthy, you can't do that with people. You can't do health to people. You have to do it with people. If you keep on smoking, you're not going to be healthy. If you keep on eating the way you do, you're not going to be healthy. So the idea is that you want to create the solution the customer wants, but there's a limit to how good that solution can be unless you involve the customers in creating it. And it's this next level of value that you want to mobilize through the platform. This is an example. This is another company I used to work for, Lego, a Danish company, the toy manufacturer. What Lego does is that they have hundreds and thousands of users around the world who are very, very fanatic about creating Lego sets. And so they've created a large gallery online where if you have created some kind of a new model, you can upload it to the gallery and you can show it to the other people who like Lego bricks. Some of the people, most of them are just young people, 5, 6, 7-year-olds who show a little rubber duck or whatever they have made. It's not very, very fancy. But some of the people who work with Lego make really, really beautiful stuff. Something like this. This is not created by professional Lego designers. These are users that have created this. So they show it on the gallery, and if they get 10,000 likes, Lego several times a year looks at the site and says, okay, they have 10,000 likes. Maybe we'll make a professional, an official set out of this. And this is what Lego does. They have something called the Lego Ideas series. And what it is basically it's models that have been created by the users. And it's a win-win situation again, because the users really, really appreciate that the company listens to them. And also the company now understands what do the users like? You know, if there's 10,000 likes on this, it's a very good indication that this product will be sold, because a lot of people really like it. And sometimes the users will come up with solutions that the Lego company could simply not think about, completely different ways of building stuff. If you look at this, this is another example of a design that was created by a user. It's actually quite advanced if you look at it. I mean, it doesn't look like Lego. It's very nice and rounded. It's a beautiful model, really, if you think about it. This was created by a user and then turned into an official set by Lego. So the idea here is that it used to be that if you were producing stuff in the industrial economy, you would be an employee of a company and you'll be working there full time and you'll be creating a lot of value for that company. But I think the value creation is changing, so more people can contribute just a little bit to it. You know, in the people who did these Lego sets, they're not employees, they don't get a salary, they don't work full time on this. But they like to be, you know, they're super users, you could call them. They're there part of the time. The people who just say, I like this model, it's a beautiful model, they're even less, they're just users. But the trick is, if you create the tool for co-creation, you're able to harvest the input. You can use even a small, I like that. If you get 10,000 of them, it's a very good indication. So it has value. Or if you create a platform where super users are visible and they feel appreciated by creating their models, well, you can involve them. And then I think what we'll see is that the economy will be composed. You will see companies trying to use more resources down in this end. They will push part of their production out to users because it's cheaper, because it gives them access to a lot of knowledge that they would otherwise not have had access to. So what we're seeing is that in this case, are you a producer or are you a consumer? If you are using these Lego bricks to create something as beautiful as this, in a sense you're both a producer and a consumer. Or if you, I mean, suppose you go on a website like Facebook. When you are making a post on Facebook, you're both producing Facebook and you're consuming Facebook. It's the same thing with YouTube. And in fact, these websites are the top websites in the world. These are media giants. The ones in red are companies where a large part of the content that they're showing is basically created by the users. So this is an example where the user and the consumer and the producer, they're all one. And this is a role I think we'll see a lot more in the next economy, because we have these tools. We will see people not necessarily being clearly a consumer, not clearly a producer, but rather you're a participant, you're a co-creator. Maybe I can be a co-creator of my own car. Maybe I can, maybe a car company can make a tool and I can go in and I can specify, oh, I'd like it to be red, I'd like this kind of leather, I'd like this kind of wheels. In a sense, you're participating in designing the car. Not much, you're not completely creating the car, but you're in a dialogue that's much more interesting than simply the old industrial model where it's a finished car and just send it out. Of course, this has a lot more value, both to the consumer and to the producer. The interesting thing about this is that we will also see that the difference between if you're an employee or if you're just somebody who's been hired in for the occasion. I think we'll see a lot more freelancing. I think we'll see a lot of more people who engage with the company only just on occasional basis. As I described before, I think the economy will be focusing on creating processes and about creating contextual solutions only for this particular moment right now. This is the combination I want to create. If you want to create that kind of value, you have to organize the value chain in a much more flexible way. You have to use freelancers. You have to use a variety of different resources. So I think we will see more of what we're seeing right now in the sharing economy, something like TaskRabbit, where a private person with a large drill can say, oh, I can come and fix your home. It's not my full-time job, but if you have to have, put up your pictures on the wall, or you have to have IKEA furniture assembled, I can do that sometimes. The same way as an Uber driver who's maybe not a full-time professional driver, but can do it just sometimes. And I think we'll see a lot more of that. And it makes good sense because you can use resources that might otherwise not have been used. Because otherwise, this guy would not take a full-time job, but now he has a chance to do the job. I think the Upwork is another example of this. This is a huge platform. They have 10 million freelancers all over the world who do digital work on this. If you want something layout, you want programming, marketing, research, translation, if you go on Upwork, you can find somebody to do what you want. And again, they are not hired. It's just a freelance platform. It's a way of combining a need and a resource which is available out there. And actually, I've used this, and the last time I used it, it was a person from Bucharest. I don't know, is Michael here? Anyway, I've used a person from Bucharest this way. And it's an example, again, that Upwork is not a company that has full-time employees. Upwork gets a lot of jobs done for its customers, but it basically only connects customers to the person who does a job, and it charges 25%. So one way of thinking about this is it's called the Hollywood economy. If you look at the way that films are being made, it's typically that you assemble a team. There's a composer, there's a director, there's an author, there's the actors, there's a photographer. All of these people are assembled, and then they work together for maybe a year, and they create the film, and they really, really struggle with it. And then the film is done, and poof, they all, reconfigure. Now suddenly they will work on different films, and the team just goes away. It was an instance, it was created just for this movie, and then it's gone away. And I think we will see the same thing for, we'll see it for education, we'll see it in healthcare. We will see that solutions are created by teams that are created just for this occasion, and then gone again. It's also called the on-demand economy. It's a very flexible economy, but of course, it's also a lot less secure. If you are used to having an industrial-style job, you had your permanent employees, you get a monthly paycheck, all of that stuff is gone here. Basically, it's a new situation where you have to renegotiate the conditions in the labor market, because suddenly, if you're not an employee, you don't have the rights that an employee used to have. Suddenly you're just a contractor. You have to deal with your insurance. You have to find your job, your next job. You have to act as if you, as a person, are a little business in your, for yourself. And I'm not sure everybody is comfortable being a business. They would rather be employees. Of course, we're used to this, and we have arrangements in society that protect people who have permanent employment, but not in this new economy. So just to summarize what I've been talking about, I think, as I started to say, we're moving into a different kind of economy. And the difference between the old economy and the new economy is that all of these things, these are just sort of the fundamental elements of the economy we used to know. That there's a company, a factory, employees, production of products, all of that is changing. Because it's no longer a company which produces, by having their own factory. It's a platform that they operate instead, which coordinates a lot of external resources rather than using their own employees. So it's an economy where you rely not on stuff that you have yourself permanently, but basically pull in for the occasion. And it's not about producing a finished product like a car or something, a chair. It's about coordinating a solution. And it's not. It used to be that you would create a finished product and then you would sell it, you would push it to the consumer. But now, what you actually do is that you listen, what does the consumer want? And then you find the resources and create a solution for this consumer right here and right now. So it really changes that logic also. And finally, the consumer itself changes, because you used to have the role where you could only consume, you could pick the things that you were offered from the menu. But now you are a co-creator and a participant. Sometimes you actually do some of the designs, and sometimes you're very much part of specifying what you're using yourself. So as you can see, this is a very different, it's simply a different structure, and it's a different kind of value creation. And it basically reorganizes the way we think about companies. Because as a company, then you may have to choose differently when you're prioritizing your budget. Should we invest in our own factory? Should we have employees, or should we outsource everything and pull it in for the occasion? How do we listen more to the consumers so we understand exactly what their needs are? How do we organize so that we can change our solutions all the time, that we're not stuck making just one thing? It's a different mindset, it's a different economy, and it's also different business models. Because maybe you're not selling one product, maybe you're selling a service and you need repeated customers. You're just selling a little part of the solution. All these things you have to consider, because this is the way the economy is going. I call this the we economy. Because I think just as you could see that the consumer and the producer were merging, or that we're all becoming participants, I think that if you want to succeed in this economy, you basically have to think not only about yourself. You have to realize that your success is very much dependent on how well can you connect to everybody else. As I started to say, we're in a world that is becoming more and more connected, where we're interacting and we're coordinating. And this is about acting as a system. If you only think about yourself, you will not get access to all the resources you can have. You really have to see your success as depending on how well you connect to everybody else. And finally, this is I just wrote a book about it. So it's called The We Economy, and if you find this is interesting, well, there's hundreds of pages talking about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. Okay, this model is very disruptive and is here. It's not about the future, it's happening right now. But what about big companies? What about big products like, I don't know, creating satellites, rockets? What will happen with this sector?
I think if you look at science and
Or fundamental research, for
yeah,
example.
no, but if you look at science, the science projects that are really changing the world these days is something like the Large Hadron Collider.
Yep.
It takes thousands of people. It's a huge project. If you want to find the Higgs boson, how many people are credited? It's thousands of people who have their name on finding the Higgs boson. Maybe there's only one person or three persons who get the Nobel Prize, but in reality, you have to understand that things are becoming more and more complex, and they require a lot of people who are coordinated to create this. You could create simple solutions with simple models, but the kind of solutions that we need to create now are very complex, and they require a lot of coordination of resources.
Questions, please. Over here.
You mentioned co-creation a lot of times, and this makes me think about IT industry and the open source software. Maybe you have some comments on that. For example, I'm curious to find out how companies like Oracle have profit on making Java free, or how Google has profit on making Node.js free, or how Apache manages to survive without asking for a feed for their software.
Or Microsoft Windows.
Well, I think open source is a perfect example of this. It's a very, very good example of how amateurs and professionals can all contribute at different levels to the same product, and you create a product that's much stronger than you would have if it was only one company. So if you can see that IBM has been using a lot of Linux because IBM made the calculation that they could try to develop their own, and it would cost them a lot of resources, it would not give them the flexibility, and they would not be able to draw on as many experts. But by using open source software, of course they have access to a huge community of international developers and people who know what they want. So I think this economy will show that you know, large and small contributions can fit together, and I think that's the strength of this economy.
Okay. More questions?
Hey, thanks for the very interesting presentation. My question is like, skeptics of this new way of working would say that sometimes you need to investigate things that are not necessarily driven by need. So, for example, research might be towards a direction that is purely theoretical, and then the application may come along later, like number theory, for example. So, a model like this wouldn't perhaps drive these directions of not exactly applicable results. How would you respond to that?
I haven't thought about that. I think if you look at the sharing economy, I think one of the things that we're seeing is that sometimes when you mix participants, where some are professionals and some are amateurs, what you see is that people will participate not because they want to make money. The people who do the Lego models, they didn't do it because they wanted to make money. And they don't get very much money for doing it actually, but they really, really like to do it because they're completely passionate about creating these models. And I think what we'll see is that we will see that we can see an economy that will start having input from people who did it just because they really, really want this to happen. So I think actually it's an economy that will include a lot of people who do it out of passion and who don't participate because they expect money. So in that sense, I think you can get people who think quite differently and non-commercially and really are focused just because they want something to happen rather than to make money. So I think I can see how if you're only thinking about short-term solutions, you will get short-term solutions. But on the other hand, you may open the economy to a lot of resources that are so different that you create breakthroughs in other ways.
Okay, I think there's one more question here.
So just to follow through on that one, around the sharing economy, and I'm sure you've approached this in your book. What about when people do want to make money, i.e. the next younger generation who are all starting their own businesses, who realise their value? And how do you feel about the sharing economy vocabulary being picked up and used by larger scale companies who are making a lot of money out of it and who actually are kind of hoovering the whole vocabulary and the whole concepts?
Yeah, yes.
Like
So,
Uber,
so this
for
idea
example.
that the sharing economy, it sounds really nice and soft, and it sounds like everybody's doing it because they like to share with each other. But in actual effect, it's huge, corporations and platforms that in some cases even extract a lot of resources.
No hour contracts and low
Yeah.
pay
Yes.
and
Yes.
no protection.
I think something like Uber, it's a standard case because it shows that it has opened up for many people who have now a chance to make a little extra money. It has opened up the labor market to people who would otherwise have a hard time finding a place there. But of course, it also replaces one model where you are an employed taxi driver and you have certain rights and you don't have to pay for the car and the insurance and all of that. You replace it with something where the entire responsibility lies with the driver. And I think we have to deal with this. I think this will be a fundamental labor struggle in the coming years. I think the model of engaging people short term, thinking about them as contractors, not having permanent employees, will completely change. It will challenge all the rights that we have built up on the social area, and I think a lot of people will have problems with this. And I really see that this struggle will maybe last a couple of decades before we find a new way of deciding what's right, what obligations do you have, who takes care of what are your rights, all those benefits. We need to renegotiate that, and I'm a little scared what will happen until we find out what the new paradigm is.
Actually, my question is pretty close to the one before. What will happen in a society or economy of co-creators with the copyright, with the intellectual rights and so on? Because it's a big debate right now about it.
That's a very hard question. Yeah. I think basically, digitally, we should be able to keep track of this stuff. There are two versions. One is that you realize that I'm part of creating the solution. I will pool my resources and I can use the resources. And you have something like the Creative Commons, you have open source, where clearly it's in everybody's interest, and you think of it as a commons. You know, like Wikipedia, you contribute, you don't expect anything back, but it's a wonderful tool for everybody. I think we will find solutions like that. I think otherwise it may be something like the blockchain, where you stamp particular contributions, every little micro contribution, and you can track it back, and you can always, see who contributed what, and you can then divide certain ways. Maybe you get credit, maybe you get money, maybe you get a combination, a better reputation, a better ranking. There are many ways of giving people benefits from their contributions.
I think time will definitely tell. I think that we can take one more very short question. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I have a question. Everybody is saying that the new economy is to participate, to co-share everything. But today's model is that all of these companies that are co-sharing, all of these people, are in fact doing their job based on a big company product. For example, Uber. Uber, it's a very big company having no cars. But the trend is that in 10 years, you'll have just 10% of the cars from today produced. That means that you'll have maybe Volkswagen disappearing from the market. Having these big giants that are supporting today's new economy, who is going to support the economy in 10 or 15 years from now on?
What do you mean by support the economy?
Uber exists because there are lots of car companies.
Yeah.
Already on the streets, right?
Already on the streets, but in 10 years, maybe Volkswagen will be out of the business, Ford is going to be out of the business, and there will not be so many cars. And in fact, today to produce a car, you really need experts. It's not that it's coming somebody from there and somebody from there, and I totally agree, getting knowledge from all the areas, but if you take somebody from the industry of clothing and put them to create an aeroplane, it's not going to fly. It's going to look nice.
It's pretty close to what I asked before about the basic products.
But you need to have some experts to work together and to increase the knowledge of what they are doing.
Yes.
Because
I think you know, producing a car. I think
Something different
if there's a need for cars, I think companies will produce cars and they will hire people to produce the cars. But I think that the production of basic goods, you know, a chair like that or standardized service, I think that will be just like agricultural production. There will be very few people who actually manufacture anything, and even a lot of intellectual production will be automated to the point where few of us will be creating the standard products. I think where the new jobs will be in creating, coordinating the solutions, figuring out what happens when you can combine several things. But I think the things that we combine, the thermostats, the physical objects, everything that is a standardized thing will be automated or outsourced and will be very, very cheap. This is not where the economy will be. The economy, the new jobs, new skills, new money will be taking these standardized, mass-produced, robotized objects and then creating value by combining them. So I think we will still have these objects, but they will be produced in a much more rational way.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Yep.
Applause for Peter. Thank you.
Good.
Time's up. Thank you.